So I can stay on the chat here. All right. All right. So good. Welcome, everybody. All right. Welcome to week 6 and week 7 of the Wealth series. Some welcome, fun, exciting news. If you didn't enjoy seeing that how $10 can compound and become your friend, and how we're finally getting some good news on how we can take a little bit of money and have it grow quickly. I love the fact that they finally said, all right, let's start having some fun, right? I can't speak for you guys, but that was refreshing. Again, I'm Chris Papalardo. I'm sort of co-hosting with Luke Vandal. However, as always, we got the mostly Chris Papalardo team here, all going through it together. Thanks for being here with us. Thanks for listening. We've had some new members join, which is wonderful. I'm going to encourage everybody. Our big aha last week was everybody feeling like, oh, how am I supposed to do all this stuff? And we said, remind everybody, look, just carve out 30 minutes. Just do 30 minutes. Even if that 30 minutes is just getting stuff together, right? And you can eventually do the highlighter exercise. This sort of stuff is the same way. Just start, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint. And we all are living our lives. The fact that you're showing up or you're listening to these, or you're printing the stuff out, just get to it bit by bit by bit. I'll also encourage everybody to let's start getting more vocal in the community group or chatting as far as challenges, successes. I know we had somebody reach out to Amy about the wine app, which was great. But anyway, let's get to it. Luke, anything else? Anything for you? Any successes this week? Any failures? Any challenges?
No, I don't think so. Let's jump in.
Have anybody here on the call? Anybody on Facebook or on the Zoom? Anybody have any successes or failures they want to share as we get rolling and get started? No, all just waking up, getting going. All right.
Anybody else?
Oh, Trevor, you start using wine app. I'm sorry, Luke. Go ahead.
Hell yeah, there you go. Anybody else realize that they finished their highlighter exercise just in time for their new statements to come out? So now I'm starting it again.
Anybody here realize that you and your spouse do the books completely differently? And you speak different languages with it? That was me and Amy. Like, she's worked her tail off making all this stuff. And I'm like, I want it different. I want it to look different. Hours and hours and hours looking at it. She's like, I think you need to do your own. It's like, maybe so, but I don't want to. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I'll share a challenge Amy and I had with limiting beliefs. So the compounding interest calculator compounds interest at 11%. And it was really, I thought like the stock market was like 4 or 5%, right? Like appreciation's 4 or 5%. Like, what is this 11% thing? What is that? Like, what can you find and just park your money for 11%? Like, we can't use that number, right? So that was one of ours. And I will say, when we get into the real estate investment purchasing, our average annualized return is over 18% currently. Ironically, when we pay off the mortgages on the rental properties, it will then drop to a measly 6 or 7%, because we get the double whammy or triple whammy of somebody else paying down the debt. Again, it's the lender's debt, not our debt, paying down the debt, and we get the write-off of all the tax, of all the interest off our taxes. So we're getting triple appreciation. The minute the properties are paid off and you're just receiving rent, ironically, it kind of becomes a like the stock market type of investment, which is interesting. So we had challenges with believing in compounding interest, so to speak, at that high of a level. Anyway, that was ours. So let's get rolling. Good morning, Jessica. So good to see everybody here. Oh, and Tierra's joining us again. Hey. All right. Luke, you want to take us through chapter 6, compound interest?
Yeah, Chris, I think that was a good segue into part 6 on compound interest. I'll start with again, compound interest being they said the 8th wonder of the world. I think that was somebody's quote, some guy's name that I can't pronounce. Has anyone else looked at their account? Anybody else have like an investment account on their app on their phone? I don't know about y'all, but when I go in my investment account app, it automatically by default pulls up the last 12 months. So I have just deleted that app off my phone for now because it's not fun to look at. I don't know if anyone else is having that experience as well. One of the things that I think is interesting about compound interest is it forces you, and this is something that some of us are really good at, some of us are maybe not as skilled at naturally, but we can get there, is it forces you to take the long-term view of things, right? So let's take the, if I gave you $1 million today or a penny doubled every day for a month, which would you take, right? That's kind of always the aha. I think they use that on the podcast as well. But, this is one of those things where we've been really in the kind of nitty gritty, looking at your last month. My wife went to the store and bought a candle, and I came home, and what she heard was, I said, like, what is that? Like, why are you spending money on that? What I think I actually said was, oh, what's that? So we've been really in the fine details. And now this is kind of one of the first times where it's, let's zoom out a little bit and look at, what could be 20, 30, 40 years down the road. So I'd love if somebody would start with giving me the definition that they gave of compound interest. Did anybody remember the definition? I'll give you a hint. We'll start with word 1. Word 1 is interest. Anyone? Bueller? Look at that. My wife brought me coffee, even though I told her she shouldn't have bought the candle. Look at that. How nice. Christopher, help us out, my friend.
All right. So definition is interest, making money, making interest on your interest.
Interest paid on interest, right?
Interest is paid on interest. After year 1, you start making interest on your interest.
Right.
So cool.
Yeah.
Actually, not even after year 1. Technically after day 1, but it just starts mounting up after a year. So.
Yep. So they use the example of Ben, Chad, and Bob all contributing $1,000 a month for 10 years to an investment account at a rate of 7%. Okay. And this is kind of the aha where, a lot of times, and just to be completely transparent, I'm in the season of life where my expenses are probably as big as they'll be. And then they'll kind of keep, maybe not as big as they'll be, but I've got 3 kids, doctor's visits and food and clothes and blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. Right. And the temptation can be to say, well, I know I should be putting some money away, investing or things of that nature. But once my expenses are lower, once 15 years from now, then I'll get started. And they use the example of Ben starting $1,000 a month for 10 years, starting at 25, stopping at age 35. Chad starting at age 35, stopping at age 45, and Bob starting at age 45 and ending at age 55. So essentially in 10-year increments. And the difference was massive. Massive. I mean, Ben, for that 10 years that he started, and let it sit for another 20 or 30 years without touching. without putting anything else into it. It's $1.5 million. You know, Chad waiting 10 years down the road was almost half. That's the power of compounding interest over time, right? Is that it is, sometimes we'll talk about it in terms of hockey stick growth, right? So you guys know what a hockey stick looks like, right? It's like long and straight, and then at the very end, it just goes straight up. And then Bob was not even 20% of that amount, right? What ahas did we have from that picture, that illustration that they gave us?
I've had some. I actually started investing pretty young, like a very small amount. And I think that I've gotten down on myself on the fact that I didn't invest more before. And yet I still like had the blessing of having the influence of my dad in my life, who set me up on just getting something in there so that there was money growing. And so when I look at it now, I am at that hockey stick. I'm like, was this even worth? I mean, I've only put a little bit in there. Like, has it done any good? And I know we actually, when I was home at Christmas, spoke about maximizing those accounts, like some of those accounts out every year so that I can start seeing what that, like the end of the stick, you know, as we're like going like 10 years from now or whatever, start seeing like that actual impact. So it's interesting, like the age thing, you know, I remember hearing that in like high school once. I had this one actual finance instructor who did talk to us about that kind of stuff. And so I remember asking my dad and he got me started. But I mean, I know that I constantly kick myself about not putting more in it earlier, because I know it does get crazy.
Yeah,
Okay,
to maybe quote the proverb there, right? The best time to put some money in the account would have been 10 years ago. You know, the second best time is right now, right? Putting some in right now.
so
Chris, you were gonna say something?
yeah, so Amy and I, so we had a challenge, don't quote times it, roughly 10 years ago, whatever, because she married me when I was insanely in debt, and not being through this and not going through that. I kept saying, we can't start saving yet. We can't put money away. We gotta get our debt first. Like we gotta get all this debt paid off, because we're paying. And my argument was, look, we're paying, 8, 9, 10, 15% interest, right? So something that's going to be gaining 5% interest, right, isn't worth it. Those were my words. And not knowing, okay, that my interest would be gaining interest, right, on my interest, I was looking at it very short-sighted. And finally, even though we weren't completely out of debt, she was like, please, can we just put something, like just start something? And we did. And again, guys, I'm older. I'm now 54. So I'm looking at a different point of view. Like, I love it, Terry. You're like, oh, I should have younger. I'm thinking, man, I'm envious of the fact that you started so young, even with something, because we see how it becomes so massive. I'm concerned for people my age or even older. They're like, oh my God, I don't have time. I don't have 30 years for this to compound and grow, right? Because by the time it gets there, I'm going to be, I need it before then. And the reality of it is, it's still better than nothing. And as you'll learn, when these things, they start snowballing quicker. Second thing is, I want to say, we're going to put a class that, or a demonstration that did about 20 minutes worth on here, hopefully Monday or Tuesday. So, Terry, you're doing what everybody does. We're all measuring things from the gap, from where we want to be, right? We're all doing that. Like, look, treat your goals or where you want to be like this horizon. You'll never touch it. But your subconscious mind, part you can't control, is always looking for the finish line, or where you should be, could be, need to be, want to be, right? And that doesn't feel good. However, if you envision looking at that goal or where you want to be like a horizon, and if you just turn your head and look at where you were and how far you've come compared to where you were, and measure from the gain, not the gap, you'll likely feel different about where you are. Because every time we look at the gap, it's a challenge. And we just had a session on this on Thursday. And there's a great book called the Gap in the Game, because our minds are taught to focus on the gap. Where are we going? Where we need to be from school on, right? You're taught first grade, second grade, third grade, right? Get things right, get better, move forward. You know, in elementary school, you're like, oh, I can't believe the fifth graders. Sixth grade, you're like, I can't believe the eighth graders. Ninth grade, I can't believe the 12th graders, right? And then there's this cycle. But if you turn and always compare yourself from where you were, you get the fulfillment, or you get a better ability to acknowledge that you are growing and moving forward. You know, and I appreciate you mentioned that, because we all have that version. And I'm so opposite of you right now. I'm thinking, boy, I wish somebody had done that with me younger. Last thing I want to say is the aha that Amy brought to me from these was, she's like, I want to put $1,000 away now for our son's kids. She was like, imagine if we just started $1,000 account now, even if we didn't touch it, for 50 years, it becomes over $400,000. Just because we leave it alone for 50 years. And then we went back and looked at Ben Franklin and how he started these funds for the state of Pennsylvania, and wouldn't allow them to touch the money for 100 years. I was like, that's genius, right? $2,000 back then. So anyway,
Yep.
just
I mean, it is interesting to think. So let's talk maybe for a minute about one particular example. And I think this is the magic of, and they may have mentioned this on the podcast. So let's take a Roth IRA, right? An IRA that you're going to put money in, and it's going to grow tax-free over time, right? The government puts a limit on how much money you can put into one of those accounts. Now, why would they do that? The only reason you'd put a limit on the amount of money that somebody could put into a savings account, right? You would think they would be wanting everybody to put as much money possible into these types of accounts to grow. The reason is they know compounding interest is so powerful that if people put more than a certain amount in there, they're going to be losing out a lot of tax money, right? Because that money will just grow and grow and grow. So that's kind of, to me, I'm a as Chris has mentioned, I'm kind of a details and logic guy. Anytime somebody is saying you can only do this much of a good thing, there's got to be a reason for that, right? And that just illustrates again how powerful this is. Now let's get to the part where I'm wondering if anybody maybe rolled their eyes a little bit. They talked in the podcast about counting up. So we've talked about, hey, how can we cut certain expenses potentially? Right. And you see, even there, Chris, I went straight to cut expenses. How can we get a picture of where our expenses are and decide whether or not the investments we're making on certain things are worth it? They talked about, let's go back to our example that we used earlier a couple of weeks ago about, the guy that worked with us for a while that spent $350 a day on a black coffee. Right. Chris, do you remember how much that was over the course of a year? You want to do the math for me real quick? You're the math guy. Nope, you're muted, Chris.
Yep, give me a second. I'll get that for you, because it was awesome.
So, they talked about, hey, what if you took some of these expenses that you've decided, hey, look, this is not worth it to me anymore. And then you invested those expenses over time. What could those expenses be worth long term, right? That is, I think some of us, maybe me especially, have been feeling like that for the first couple of weeks. It's kind of been negative, cut. But I think this example was, okay, let's take some of those things that you decided are not worth what you're spending on it, and let's even give you a picture of what they could be worth if you did something else with it, right? And I just thought that was really helpful. Now the magic is in actually doing it, right? It's great to know how much it's worth, but the magic is in actually doing it. So what if instead of, let's just call it, $350 a day times 5 days a week times, let's just say 48 weeks a year. Let's just say it's not there. That's 840.
Yeah, it was 975, but now I'm pulling up while you're talking. I'm gonna pull up the calculator. And I'm gonna
Calculator,
see
yeah.
if we did that at even a 10%. I'm gonna give you I'm
Yep.
working on it.
Yep. So, a lot of the time when we've been looking at these expenses, right? We've been saying, man, is it worth $975 a year for me to get a cup of coffee? Right. And that's been eye-opening in and of itself. But what if we said, well, is that cup of coffee a day worth what the number Chris is about to give us compounded, right? Would it not be easier? Or how would that change our mindset around maybe foregoing some of these optional expenses? How might it get us to think differently about it?
I feel like I just keep going back to that episode where he's talking about, I can't remember if it was Warren Buffett who said it or who, but where he talks about like, don't take your money and then figure out what you're going to spend and then figure out what's left and save that, but figure out what you're going to save and then spend what's left. And I keep hearing that. And like, I feel like every angle I look at it, it kind of like messes me up from a different angle. Like from a different angle, I'm like, okay, I get it. And I'm like, oh, but I feel like that same thing. It's like, if we first figure out like what our goals are for investing or for saving, then like, I feel like I said, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but for me, it like kind of helps me figure out like what is worth, because then you get to the point, it's like, okay, if I say this is my budget and this is how much I want to save, and then I go and compare that to what I'm spending, then it's like, well, okay, what is worth not saving to spend? Like, what is worth that pleasure right now versus the pain of not having it and having the pleasure of having that money later and living a maybe more relaxed life. So that helping me kind of like process these mentalities of like cutting, I guess.
Yep.
So
Luke, yeah, I think I kind of think similar to what you said to Tiara. And I think I got mine from Robert Kiyosaki's book, when he said you gotta, I think he said, pay yourself first before you do anything else. In the beginning, when I was reading the book, I'm like, I got to pay these bills first, and then whatever's left, I can decide to do what I want to do with it. But it's not until you finish the book or you go deeper into the book that you realize exactly what he's talking about. Which it gives you, he makes you have more intentions on how you spend the money, which you need to think about the bigger goal ahead of time, sort of thing. So, but it took me a while. It just made me keep reading the book, still understand exactly what he was talking about. But yeah, I did agree with that, Tiara.
was that from Rich Dad Poor Dad or one of his other ones?
I think I read all of his books, but I don't know.
Yeah. I just read the Rich Dad Poor Dad. Actually, I took me forever to finish it just because reading about finances is not my typical topic of that I guess tops the list. But it took me forever, and I finally finished it towards the end of last year. And when I finished it, I was like, towards the end, I was just like flipping. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good.
Right.
I want to read the rest of them, so I know that there's some good ones out there.
No, and that's a great point. I don't know if any of you have experienced this. So I don't have buckets of food in my crawl space, waiting for the apocalypse or anything. But I am kind of a rainy days will probably come person, right? So I'd be curious the way that it's kind of happened for me. And I realized that listening to this episode is I've kind of said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, work really hard this year. And if I have a good year, at the end of the year, I'll look and see what, how we did, how we finished up. And then I'll do, X, Y, and Z with my money. Right. Well, essentially, what am I doing when I do that? I'm just robbing myself of a year of compounding interest, which doesn't sound like, it's just a year. It's not that bad. But when you look at the difference between 1 year, when you get to the tail end of it, right? That could be hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially that I'm delaying. Louis, exactly because of what you're saying. It's because of a failure to pay myself first. I think we got the stats here.
All right, so check this out. I put in the interest calculator. If you take $975 after 1 year and you add $70 a month, so he was spending $350 5 days a week, 4 weeks of the month, right? So $70 a month. So after 10 years at a 10% interest, Amy, I didn't do more. I did 10% interest. Okay. After 10 years, it's 17 grand. Okay. After 20 years, it's 60 grand. And in 30 years, it's $178,000. By starting off with $975, and then just that one habit, just putting that habit that you did, that, again, I'm sorry, I can, and we have free coffee at the office, right? So so not going without, just not doing that thing. In 30 years, that's $178,000.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of money for a cup of coffee. I don't know
But
about you guys.
even in 10 years, $17,000 is a lot of money. That's where I want to make sure we're measuring from the gain, not the gap, right? Because how many of us actually heard, well, 30 is fantastic, but 10 years is crap. That's what I hear. But I have to say to myself, wait a minute, I didn't do anything but just not spend it there and put it in the bank. And in 10 years, I got $70,000. I'll take 17 grand in 10 years. Okay. Like that's free money in my head. Right. But that's not what my brain said. It was like, if I can't get it to 30, what's the point? And that's where I think most of it gets stuck. No, having $17,000 by changing one habit of buying a cup of coffee at Starbucks and doing that is still worth it. For me. I have to remind myself of that. I'm going to put the stats in Facebook too. So.
Yeah. So if you haven't taken a look at the calculator or the workbook, excuse me, that shows the different examples of 10, 15, 20% annual returns. I think that'll be super helpful to look at, especially as we continue on, because we're going to be talking about different. I think as we've been talking, a lot of us have just been thinking, well, put it in a stock account or something of that nature, which that's great, and we're going to continue to talk about that. But like Chris was mentioning earlier, when I saw page 12 of the workbook that had 20% annual returns, I thought, well, that's great, but where are you going to get 20% annual returns at, right? You can't get that anywhere. In reality, there are places that we can get that. And again, you may have years, just a reminder to everyone, because everyone's going to get really excited and they're going to go look at their accounts and freak out a little bit. 20% annual return is the return over the course of time, right? I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but for me, one of the challenges is to just not look at it, right? Don't look at it, leave it alone, right? I have some accounts that, congratulations to me, because I wanted to, get into investing, put some money aside in an account, and guess what? From the time I put it in, hooray, down 20%. So those numbers don't look very good to me on my side, and the temptation can be to panic and say, well, this is not working, right? Got to do something else. This is not working. And, I've heard it said, and maybe you guys have had people talk to you about this as well, especially in the stock market, right? The only way you get hurt is if you lock in your losses, right? If you sell, right? So it's down right now. If you're putting it away and you don't need it. Now, if you're towards the end where you're, need to take it out, that might be a different story. But for the majority of us who are not planning on retiring anytime soon, right? As long as you don't lock in your losses, as long as you don't panic, as long as you set yourself up financially to be able to weather a 20% down market, guess what? Then you can start looking at, well, let's look at it a different way. Market's down 20%. What are the returns on average over the past 10 years? Could there potentially be opportunity right now in a down market to capitalize on a down market? Right.
And I want to say that, Luke, so for me and being older and being 20 years older, right? I looked at Amy, I was like, now we need to buy, because somebody just gave me a 20% head start to get ahead, right? Because, you know, I mean, really, that's where I was like, ooh, wait a minute, right? Maybe I need to double down and buy a bunch right now because it is so down. And then when it catches back up, we get double appreciation. Again, change the way you look at things, the things you can look at change, right?
Yeah.
You know?
And, you know, again, we've been having this long conversation about, sorry, my son just walked in here and took a picture of me with a camera. What is happening? You know, what we're building is we're building a financial reality to where we know what's going on with our finances, because some of us right now may be at a point where, you know, Tracy, I really appreciated your comment in the Facebook group when we were talking about, look, if you're overwhelmed, just take it a step at a time, right? We're not, you know, a couple episodes ago, the Save Like Crazy episode, right? Some of us are like, man, save 25% of my income. I can't do that, right? That's insane. I can't do that. And again, progress, not perfection, right? So, you know, some of us are looking at it thinking, man, oh gosh, I haven't put anything aside in a compounding account for 10 years, right? Progress, not perfection. Take one step at a time, take the next step. And know that the math is on your side, right? Long term. Anybody have any other kind of final ahas?
That's huge. The math is on
compounding?
your side. Even if it's $10, $20, the math is on your side. That's great. Just like, again, measure from the gain, not the gap. Right? Like the math is on your side. This shows you like, wow, you can get rid of a cup of coffee or, you know, a pizza or whatever, right? I mean, that 10 or $12 a week, that's not going to change your lifestyle, right? You're not changing your lifestyle. Will it propel you forward? Will. Thanks.
Yep. Anybody have any final ahas from the compounding interest section? If not, we will move on to session 7, flipping the triangle and retirement planning. This one was really interesting. Who wants to give us what the triangle actually is, where most of us are at right now, right? You got cash flow in the middle quadrant of the triangle. What was at the base and what was at the top of the triangle? I need some Final Jeopardy music here.
I think you do. I'm looking over here. I know somebody's got it.
I'm sorry. I would try to help, but I actually did not get to that episode. So
no worries.
No worries.
Thank you, LP. And again, thanks for showing up no matter what. It's okay, right? It's all right. You know, you're reversing it, right? So you got your assets, you got your expenses, right? And then you get income. So cash flows in between. So what most of us do is we actually, you know, we make our money, we pay all of our expenses, and then we live almost less. Well, no, you're supposed to have buy your assets first, have cash flow, right? And then pay all your expenses. So we got to reverse it. You know, we got to flip it.
Yeah.
That's what wealthy people or people who understand money do, is we think we pay all of our expenses, right? I mean, we make our living, we pay all of our expenses, pay all of our taxes, and then live on what's left. Well, they don't do that. They pay themselves first, okay, right? And then use their investments to do that. And then they with the cash flow, then they pay the expenses or what's left at the end. Okay.
Yeah, and let's remember all the way back to episode 1, right? The definition of wealth that they're operating on is the ability to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, right? So flipping the triangle, this idea, and I think, Louis, you mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think he gets at this a lot in that book, right? That, I don't know about you guys. I grew up in a small town, Saxby-Hall, North Carolina. I was born in the South, but it didn't take. We moved uptown to Swepsonville. We went from no stoplights to one blinking caution light. So in my small town, I went to college, and this is how I thought my life would go, because this is how I thought everybody's life went. You went to college, you graduated from college, then you found a job, and you worked there for 30 years, and hopefully you'd set aside enough to be able to retire at some point. And, and then maybe once you retired, you picked up a little second part-time job or something along those lines. And it was just kind of varied. That's what everybody did, right? The concept of owning assets to bring you cash flow, to bring you your income, was completely foreign to me, right? Like the ability, even when we talk about, financial freedom, right? Of being able to work on, financial freedom could essentially be being able to work on what you want, when you want, with who you want, right? That concept to me, if you would have told me, hey, there's a world where you could just own enough assets where they're bringing you enough income where you get to decide what you actually want to do, right? That would have been completely foreign from my upbringing, at least. So, how does this change the way that we make decisions with money if we're thinking about wanting to flip the triangle?
I think at least for me, it gets me to actually do the small things like what we talked about last week, where you have to just find a way to spend 30 minutes going through your financial stats and just make sure you know where your money is going. So that you're not just like, oh, I just got paid this week, this month. Let me just send over and pay the bills and then deal with whatever's left. Because frankly, when I'm looking at this, I'm like, it almost seems impossible unless you start to get some education on it. If I didn't read the book, if I didn't meet anyone that talks about this, and I just find this online somewhere, I'll think that it was someone just wrote some BS for me to read, and I just overlook it and just move on. But being part of a group that they do it and is real, it makes you think that, okay, this is possible. But then it takes your actions. It takes you having to put up a plan and actually start taking steps towards that. And I think that's where I'm at right now. I just have to take steps so that I could believe in what I think is a dream. So
And
Yeah,
thank you for sharing.
that's great. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we're talking about. Like for many of us, like, come on, we've all said it. Like I mean, who hasn't said, like, where does all the money go? I mean, come on. Haven't we all said that? Like, where did it go? Right? Just where did it go? I mean, that's just real. And that's why I said the 30 minutes of like, look, once you get the system up and running, and I've mentioned this before, in case you guys don't know, I'll say this again. We sell real estate and you have to track your numbers. You have to know how many people you're talking to. You have to know how many appointments you go on. You have to have all these things. And we got some really smart, dedicated people. I mean, LP, Luke, Amy, like dedicated, caring, smart people. It took us 2 years of getting it wrong to finally figure out how to track our numbers. 2 years of every month going, well, how do we do? Well, we're not sure because we have this exception and that exception, this and that, and that. 2 years. And the reality of it was, though, after 2 years of getting it down, okay, finally, well, that's the rest of our lives to be able to do something that matters. So that's why I said, like, look, do the exercise, just start looking at your accounts and figuring out red, yellow, and green, right? You'll eventually systematize it, right? It's just starting, just work a little bit by bit by bit. But it might take a year or two to get a handle on what you actually, a system that works for you to where you, because the goal is this. The goal is, Louis, for all of us is I can look at my financials in 10 minutes and be done. That's the goal. The goal is not to spend all your, because by the way, that's not what people do. They aren't sitting there staring at their accounts and doing all that. That's not what they do. They get to go look at, you need to look at your business P&L eventually. And in 5 or 10 minutes, know, am I good? Am I not good? Wow. Amy got so good. She could tell me halfway through the month, halfway with our appointments. She's like, we're off. Let's talk to our team. Something's not right. Then I was like, we wouldn't even get to a month or 2 or 3 in a shift where she knew because, but that didn't happen overnight. That was 2 years of getting it wrong every month, right? Of being like, well, we're sort of here, right? But eventually it was just like, nope. And she'd be like the 15th of the month, like, whoa. Appointments are down, calls are down, something's up. It's like, wow, okay. And that's the goal, is eventually you get to that where you're looking at 5 or 10 minutes. Second thing I'll say is this. We all got to let ourselves off the hook. None of this is taught to us in school. None, it's not even hinted at. Our entire education on math, science, history, everything. They don't talk about any of these things. My God, why are they not putting in our textbooks that Ben Franklin put $2,000 away for the state of Pennsylvania and wouldn't let him touch it for 100 years? Why is that not in a textbook somewhere? I'm like, the guy created our public library, created the fire department, all these entrepreneurial things. And we talk about him being, great for America and all those things. And those are important details. So we got to let ourselves off the hook, the fact that you're right. Nobody told us this. Nobody taught us this. Nobody taught us how money worked, right? And however, guess what? Now we know, and we get to share. No judgment. We get to share with anybody who wants to learn, and we get to help everybody keep doing this, right? Because we can't change that. So by the way, our son, we taught him about saving early on. We made it insane. We're like, if you put that $5 away, it'll double next week. We made it insane to him to understand the value of saving. And they told us, make it ridiculous so they understand the value of interest and of saving. And I'm proud to say, as a 9-year-old, there are times he's like, nope, I don't need that much. I'd rather save my money. Just because we learned, right? To teach him instant gratification isn't always the best thing. Wait 24 hours, Miles, or wait, 48 hours. And then if you really want it, we'll go get it for you. And it works, right? And you guys, all of us, we get to make these things move forward. This is what I'm excited about. But we got to let ourselves on the hook, right, Louis? Because, man, we all thought, is this some big secret that we don't know? Why didn't they tell us this stuff? It's amazing, right? And I really don't know why, but I can't control that. All we can do is control moving forward. I'm just glad you're doing it. And even a little bit, it's so cool. It's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
Yep.
in my house, I'm just like, whew, why didn't they teach us that?
It's easier to make us do what they want when we don't know the details. No, I will say that personally, I actually was raised in a house with a financial advisor, and I still didn't absorb these things. So I think that,
wow,
it's don't beat yourself up, because even if you did have the education, you're only you can only take whatever you're willing to take, right? And I just didn't want to learn it then. So I can kick myself over and over again. And yet I'm still here today in the now. So it's like, I'm super grateful for this platform. And I know I've invited a couple other people who have been on and have said like, gosh, it's just so nice to not feel like there's any judgment in there. It's like very real and vulnerable. And so I'm super grateful for you guys just creating this atmosphere for us to have these open conversations, because it isn't taught to us and it feels a little shameful to not know these things. But if you really talk about it, no one does. So personally, you know, I've always been, I feel like once I started getting money, I got avoidant of looking at my bank account because I didn't want to know if it was going down or up. And so for me, I've actually noticed that I've been so obsessed with this stuff lately that I'm choosing, like, I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not coming over for a game now on Friday. I want to work on like my budget stuff. And so I'm not spending money because I'm so obsessed with just like being in this. And I'm probably taking, well, no, I'm taking just the right amount of time. Yet I think that, you know, for me, just looking at my numbers regularly has been like empowering, because even though they're not where I want, it's like I'm thinking about them. You know what I mean? It's not just did I get paid and how much is left after I went and bought the things I was waiting for that paycheck for, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's cool because for me, I feel like it's empowering, just like little decisions, just like the little cups of coffee. I'm like, do I need to order the DoorDash? No, you have food in the fridge that you spent a good amount of your budget for. So go ahead and buy that. So it's been very powerful and helpful for me to just be sitting in the numbers and looking at them and playing around with them a little bit, you know,
Yeah,
not being so fearful of them.
that's great. By the way, I'm
Yeah.
going to challenge you and Amy. I'm gonna put you guys both on the spot. So everybody, Amy and Tara are doing this app called YNAB, and I'm going to challenge you guys to, before we wrap up in February, to do a little Zoom, a separate Zoom from this, on, walking people through what y'all learn on that app, on the best ways to use it. Because I will say it's freaking cool. Like Amy finally, like she's been the spreadsheet queen, because we got rentals now, and we got our business, and we got a lot going on, and it's hard to figure like where stuff needs to be. And she's dialed into this app. So even this morning, she's like, wait a minute, I can go look. And it was like, oh, look at that. Right. It was just so cool. So I will, implore you guys to give us a half an hour at some point outside this, and like, let's just do a Zoom live on it and let everybody here learn from you guys on how to set those things up, and so that way they can see it quicker or learn quicker, because it's just freaking cool.
Yeah.
Just real quick, for me, the biggest thing was it just attaches to all of our accounts. I was like, this seems so silly that I'm taking all of this painstaking time to copy and paste numbers into a spreadsheet. And I was like, everything's connected to this, this cloud. So that alone, I was like, I can probably do 30 minutes on YNAB, but that alone, anybody else is doing spreadsheets.
Yeah, I had the same exact experience. I finally got to the point where I'm sorting my money now and I'm categorizing it. And I'm like, this takes like no time and it's done for me. And it goes and tells me, did I overspend, underspend? It's a very powerful tool. So I'm happy to mastermind with Amy and get something going for everybody.
Yeah, we'll just use the same platform. Saying again, that's what it's for. I'm going to load in the victim versus accountable and gain versus gap session I did Thursday. It's about 20 minutes. I'm going to load that here. Just gonna just keep pushing as much value here as we can. LPs mentioned like, man, I want to be more involved. I want to do more. I want to help more. It's like, all right, so like that's the goal. Like, just we got it. Let's get them up here. We're probably going to have a cash flow game at some point somewhere, which is a lot of fun. We'll do that. So thank you guys all. Thank y'all all always for sharing.
Yep.
So anyway.
Yeah, and somebody just mentioned a minute ago. One of the things I think was, if you haven't done the workbook from session 7 yet, this is one where, if you've been kind of feeling like it's been a grind to get through and do all this stuff and categorize all this stuff, session 7 is where it can get fun, right? Because I don't know if any of you feel this way. sometimes when you get in these conversations about savings and compounding interest and retirement and da 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 da, all it can feel like this infinite game, right? That there's no end in sight, right? We've talked, I think, on this platform before about money being good for the good that it can do, right? Money being good for like, I don't think any of us want to be whatever that cartoon's name was, just like bathing in gold coins, right? Like, we have stuff we want to do, and this is the session where they actually challenge you, like, okay, what does your retirement look like, right? For some of us, there's a saying in my house that bored Luke is bad Luke, right? Like, bored Luke is the Luke that goes and raids the pantry and just eats random things that Luke shouldn't eat, right? So for some of us, it may be, my butt's going to be in the sand in Turks and Caicos and just sitting around, and that's great. For some of us, it may be like, look, I got stuff I want to do. I got places I want to go. I got people I want to help. I got all these other ideas that, if my expenses were reduced, right, to a certain amount and I had enough money coming in to do this, I would do X, Y, and Z. There's no wrong answer, right? It's what do you want it to be? And this is kind of the session where, we've talked about trading, current pleasure for future pleasure. Well, you got to figure out, like, what is the future pleasure for you? Like, what's going to feel good in 25, 30, 40 years, whenever it is, right? Chris has helped me a lot over the past couple of years, kind of pointing out, you need a compelling vision to pull you forward, to help you when you get into times where you have to make difficult decisions, right?
Yeah.
So, we've been this cup of coffee example, right? The cup of coffee example. And for most of us, especially if you work at our office and you have free coffee, but for most of us, we could eliminate some things without it really feeling there being any kind of negative pressure for us, right? We could swap it with something else. But there might become a time where, you have to make a difficult decision. Like, you may not be able to go on the vacation you want to go on, right? Or, you may have to decide, hey, instead of buying a new car, I'm going to, pay for this repair on my car and get a couple more years out of it so I don't have a car payment. And there's all kinds of illustrations that we could have. And the decisions aren't fun. Like, financially, like, one of the things I think that can be a common misconception is, well, if you just get your plan together, then you just operate the plan will work perfectly. I don't know about any of you guys, but the last 5 years of my life, at least, have not gone exactly how I planned them to go 5 years ago, right? I don't know if anybody else has that experience, but there is a sense in which if you get a picture on, Amy's helped me on this, the picture in your head, right? I'll ask people all the time, well, what's the picture on your head on this? If you get an idea of the picture in your head of what you want, that, so, instead of the every month where you put that couple $100 away in that account, and that means you can't go out to eat, or you can't, update your wardrobe or whatever, right? You can say, hey, this $200 is, for my chair in Turks and Caicos on the beach, right? It's a lot easier to make those decisions in that regard. Anybody have any ahas about kind of, hey man, I didn't realize, like, this is actually what I want my retirement to look like? What does retirement look like to you guys? What are some things we're doing all this for?
Mine is I want to be able to just, when I'm ready, to just wake up and go check out on my investment, and maybe look at the numbers and go chill out, and go help out people, and some of the things that Chris does, where he coaches people and all that stuff. So maybe when I get up there, all I gotta do is not worry about where the money's coming from, but just to check on it, and have what was the word? A system in place that handles all of that for me, while I just go out and impact people's life in a positive way, and maybe be a coach too. Or a soccer coach.
Yeah, so that's you're talking about, like, doing what you want when you want, with who you want, right? So everybody has this determination of this retirement is like this, I'm going to sit in a rocking chair and do nothing. We're like, God, I can't even imagine Tara, Louis, Luke, all of us would be like, are you kidding me? How that like that? Why would I want to work towards that? That doesn't sound fun. So back to what you said of having a compelling future. A compelling future is doing what I want, when I want, with who I want. Well, now wait a minute. Now that's worth gearing up for, right? That's worth doing some stuff for, because there's some fun stuff I want to do, right? You want to do. I mean, LP wants to travel. That girl wants to travel, right? And not worry about anything. Like I want her to have a blog where she just posts photos of her doing crazy, cool things all over the world. Can't wait, right? Let's go. Let's get it done, right? Let's get there. So I'm going to go the other way with it. As Luke would say, I was like, look, will you please, if you do nothing else, if you can't do the highlighter exercise, if you're too busy, go do the retirement calculator. Go do step 7. Dream. What the heck do you want to live on? What does it cost to go travel all year? Louis, what's it cost, right? How much do you, how much is the house going to be that you want to live in? So when you wake up and you can do what you want, when you want, with who you want, what's all that going to cost? I don't care what's going to cost. Dream. This is the time, right? What's that going to cost you? And then we will build into it, right? This retirement calculator helps you understand the value of what 4%, right? Pulling 4% of that money out will come. I promise you the how will show up. It's going to show up. Because we've been beating everybody up on like, what are you spending? What can you cut? But no, go dream, please. Have a compelling future. Like for you, for your family, for your kids, for your grandkids, for your parents, right? We've got elderly parents, man. We are gearing up to be able to like write the check for them. I want to do that. You know, and it'll happen. So this one to me, when he said like we're finally having some fun, I feel like a lot of us still have feel this pressure, like I'll never get there, or I'm afraid to put a number down. And I'm telling you, you know, fear, faith, you choose. Fear is just faith that something bad's going to happen. Like you are no more than 5 years from that, because we can create the plan to get that happening. You will change some routines. Yeah, you will do some things differently, but that's because you're choosing to do them. Because you want them, you know what I mean? And if it's not compelling or you don't want them, well then don't. But dream, man, do this way. If you do nothing else, like go do the retirement calculator exercise, right? Go look how much your Social Security is going to give you. Go look at how much you need in a 401k or whatever. I just showed you what freaking $350 a day does over 30 years. That's 178 grand right there, right? I mean, imagine what happens when we make that $10 a day, which is going to happen. Because the other thing that was in here that I finally realized that Amy has tried to coach me to, and now I'm coaching Luke to it, is when you start tracking your hourly rate, what you make per hour, it'll blow you away how much time you will stop wasting. My wife has been trying for years to get me to not go and do, but I'm only 10 minutes away. Let me go get this done. You know, she's like, stop it. Go make a phone call. Go help somebody else. Right? She's like, I can pay somebody $20 to do that. You're worth more than that per hour. And it's not worth like value of activity. It's just that, no, you're helping them. They're making a living. Track your hourly rate. Get it to go up, right? And you make money when you're sleeping. Leverage, yeah, right? But anyway, please, like, have fun with this. This is not the, oh my God, no, put it all on there. Like when we do business planning for our whole team, I'm like, the dreams are on there, man. I gotta have the dreams. And I do want to do what I want, when I want, with who I want. And they are not little things. Like they are big things, man. Like one of them is I want to make sure 12 people become millionaires from me coaching them. Right? I mean, that's like, I mean, that's me included, but I got to get there to do it in my mind, right? You know, I mean, Tracy, God, taking care of your wife and your kids, man, I'm so inspired. KJ, all of you, I'm just so inspired to like, let's get there. But we got a dream, and it takes a number. It takes a number. So let's figure out what that number is to start with. We can always change it, and then we can build a plan to get there. I mean, if freaking $350 a day can become $178,000, what else can we do?
I was talking with my mom this week, and my mom's also a realtor, and she was talking about she's helping this older lady buy right now, and she keeps saying these things about like, I hope somebody wants to take care of me when I'm old. And I was like, can you tell me why you keep saying that? And I realized like she doesn't know that that's part of my plan. Like I want to be able to replace their income. And like I'm like, okay, so this could actually happen and take that like worry off her plate. And I just like thinking about that when she said that this week, I'm like, I literally was like, wait a minute, that's rude, because I'm over here trying to make a plan for taking care of your like whole your whole income. So people are going to take care of you, you know what I mean? But it just was funny because I'm like, that's something I genuinely want to do. And it, like you know, my whole family, my sisters are not the type to really go make a lot of money. They'll be fine just doing what they do. And I want to show them and my nieces and nephew, like, you guys can dream bigger than staying in your small little town and making a minimum, wage that just barely gets you by. So like for me, big dreams is like, I personally want to retire very young. And when I retire, I want to just live in different countries for a large amount of time, like whether that's 6 months, a year. And while I'm there, like invest in real estate, whether that's resorts or small places. But I want my family to be able to travel because of what I've put in place for them to do it on whatever budget they want. And, also be able to help show them that they can also make those changes. So it's fun dreaming about these things. I think I had somebody ask me like, what is your net worth goal? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to get out of the negative right now. You know what I mean? And yet, like, it's so easy to just get stuck in that. I'm trying to get out of the negative. Well, like, dream bigger. That's not a very big goal. Like, I want to actually leave things for people. And I don't want my parents to sit here thinking like, oh gosh, how, because my parents, I'm like, they have planned for retirement some, but not as soon as they wanted to, you know what I mean? And so they're sitting here like, well, we want to be retired, but I guess I got to do this job. So I would love to be able to help fast track their goal that they didn't, like they let us live a really big life. In return, they're paying for that now in their retirement years. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I want to replace that for them. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I bet if we, looking at the materials, it talks about Vegas, right now, I'm willing to bet, all the money in my pocket that everybody that's either on these calls or listening and doing these things has a compelling reason. Like they actually already have like, hey, I know I want to get there, right? Like, frankly, I mean, that becomes obvious that already, like I know most of you, and I'm like, man, I know all of you guys have a big compelling reason to be doing this. And funny enough, you're showing up and doing it. And I've already talked to people who aren't even on these calls that they're like, oh my God, I'm through this and through that. And they're not making these calls, but they're still doing it. So we know you've already got it. Let's just put a number on it. Now it's just time to put a number on it, and then we'll go get it, and let's not, if we can, again, gain versus gap, let's not let that be scary. Let's be like, oh my gosh, that's opportunity. That is clarity, right? Like, and and all those things. Like Amy and I put down all the vacations and what they're going to cost and all that stuff. We did it, and it was a big number. It was like, all right, let's go. Let's get there. So thanks, and thank all of you guys because let's just get a number on it. Don't be afraid of it. And if you are, again, share. Let's talk about it.
Also, I made a quick vision board this week on Canva. I have been wanting to do vision board for like a year. And I don't have magazines. I'm like, where am I going to find these? I like things to look aesthetically pleasing. So it's like, I want a specific look. And so I went on Canva and then got on Pinterest and would just type in something that I wanted to do. And I would find an image that actually like gave me that feeling of like, wow, that's cool. And I'm taking some big trips this year. And I hadn't even looked at some of the places I'm going to go. And the putting them on my vision board and actually seeing what it could look like for me to be there, like that changed. So, you know,
Wow.
Canvas
I
got
would
me
love to
cool.
know how to do that. Don't laugh. In our garage, because we have our team do vision boards every year, right? This is every year. Amy saves magazines. We have boxes of magazines to do that. And you just upped it a game. If we can go to Canva, because we use Canva. Oh my gosh.
That's
Ah,
mine.
would you mind would you mind either posting that in the Facebook community group or
Yeah.
email to me? I'd love to, I'd love to see it. And
Yeah.
I'd love to know how you did that, because like I said, my wife gathers magazines all year
Yeah.
for us to do that. I mean, we have just boxes of them. Like
I
take it up a
literally,
notch.
I had some sitting underneath my couch gathering dust, and I finally got rid of them. And then I was like, well, great. Now I'm really not going to make the vision board. And I honestly, that's not even a full, like, that was like, I just need something to get myself like focused that I'm looking at regularly. So I'm like, let me just make a small little quick one. And I went and looked at my goals and tried to at least have a little something on there. So I'd be happy to share it with you guys. And it really didn't take me more than an hour probably. So
there's Amy's last one right there.
they're powerful.
And then over
Other side. Yep.
there's another one for her. So and she's got the other ones on the back of the closet door, right? So like because we with you. That's fantastic. Oh, that's great. And if we could do a digital version, oh my gosh. Fantastic. Oh, fantastic. Love it. Love it.
All right. Well, we are running up on time here, and I know you guys have stuff you need to get done today. So anybody got any final closing comments, questions?
Yeah, any ahas from today or challenges? I'd love to hear what you guys got. Like, oh, never done a vision board. Oh yeah, man. Woo! Freaky when you pull them out years later and the stuff on it, you're like, oh, look at that. I got 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 that. I have no idea why I put that on there. Now I see. Oh yeah, man. Vision boards are cool. Vision boards are cool.
If you don't know what a vision board is and you put all quotes on it and your team says that that's a psychopath move, which is what I did the first time I had a vision board.
First time he did it was all words, all quotes. We're like, never seen that.
I was like, I did not understand the assignment.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone. Today was great. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you very much. Yeah, vision board's great. Any other ahas or anything we need to know or you want to share? Tracy, what you got? You came off mute, so I thought you wanted to chat.
You know, for me, the way he explained compound interest, I had no idea that it worked that way, and it's in the way that he explained it. I always thought it was something that was so big and so major that it would take me a lot to learn how to do. So to me, to see that it can be done in a simpler form is my aha for today.
Sweet. Good. Yeah, did it give you a little hope like, oh, a little bit can actually become a lot? Sweet. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you guys all. All right. Well, again, thank you. I'll hang out for a minute or two, or if you have any other questions or any other eyes, love it. But thank you guys so much for being here. And again, anybody's welcome. None of this is gonna go away. We're gonna keep it here. So anybody, CJ's been sending out that amazing sheet that has like the recordings, the workbook, everything. So it's like, feel free to share that with anybody, everybody, they can jump in anytime. No wrong answer. So let's just keep all helping each other grow. And again, the community is a safe place. If you're having challenges, if you're having breakdowns, we're not mind readers. Please reach out. We want to help everybody. We're all going to have them. So we can only help if you reach out and say, I need help. or I'm just having a challenge, I can't get past it, please, sincerely. We want to make sure we leave it better than we found you, and you're not on an island, right? So just know that safe place, no judgment. Just, we're very trainable. We're just not mind readers. So thank you guys. Have a great Saturday.
See you guys.
You guys have a great week.
You too, my man.